Government and public sector organizations face unique challenges in accomplishing complex missions with limited resources. One of those challenges is how best to leverage the cloud to modernize agency infrastructure and applications. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and joining us to talk about that today are Zach Kelly, Enterprise Strategist at AWS, and Steve Veneruso, Chief Technology Officer at Ventech Solutions. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. And let me start with you, Zach. Talk to us a little bit about what you see as the biggest challenges that you're hearing from federal agencies about migrating to or capitalizing on the cloud. And why are we still having these challenges?
Right. Thanks, Wyatt. Absolutely. So what we're finding is that our federal customers are increasingly becoming mature around migration. And so we're seeing fewer and fewer issues around migration in terms of technology and approach and strategy. What we do still see with migration, though, is what is the right starting point? What is the right foundation for customers to have? And we highly recommend that customers think about the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework. That helps them put those foundational pieces in place from the beginning, so they don't run into issues down the line as they scale out with enterprise workloads. Now, in terms of getting the full benefit of the cloud, what we're seeing there is governance is becoming increasingly important. The cloud promises a lot. It promises cost savings, scalability, high security, ability to be very flexible and dynamic and experiment with new technologies. But sometimes customers feel that they're not getting those full benefits. What we observe is to get the full benefit, it's important to change the mindset and change the governance models to really take advantage of what cloud offers. Quick example of that, think about enterprise change control. Most agencies have a fairly mature change control process. You meet weekly, you submit your change request, it goes through a review process, and after several reviews, maybe over several weeks, it's accepted and it moves forward. That's right for data centers where you have to build things, it's very physical, and it takes that amount of time. With cloud, that same work could actually be done in minutes in many cases. So it's really important not to skip any steps or approvals, but to adapt the governance model to really take advantage of what cloud can offer. And there are many similar examples.
That's a great point. Steve, over to you. From your perspective as a federal systems integrator, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing federal agencies encountering trying to capitalize on the cloud?
Yeah, thank you, Wyatt. So I'd like to echo on what Zach said about governance. So with the migration to the cloud, there are great costs to be captured in getting out of the infrastructure business and really outsourcing that to the cloud provider. Reliability, everything like that. However, what I've seen again and again throughout several agencies is the lack of movement on the governance side. And it's a very generic word, understand, but that includes all of the touch points, some of which Zach alluded to actually deploy systems. So moving to the cloud, but still maintaining a waterfall system is very expensive in terms of infrastructure, in terms of time delays from all those touch points to different teams, security, infrastructure, application teams, et cetera. So really moving the infrastructure to not just infrastructure as code, but really getting to hyper automation so that a lot of the routine things that happen in a data center, they don't need to happen in the cloud if the structure with the proper appropriate guardrails are established. And so what we've been able to achieve along with our government partners is really moving to that point where we look at every single touch point along the way and what can we do either on the software side or on the governance side to shred those so that it really is only the touch points that need to be there to make sure that insecure code, for example, doesn't get promoted or 508 incompliant code doesn't get promoted. And what that's allowed is rather than it taking 1 month to 3 months to actually spin up infrastructure for an application team, the application teams themselves can self-deploy as long as they meet the security and software testing requirements set forth by the government. So as long as they meet those thresholds, then it can fly through. They can do it on a Friday night without making any phone calls, without delaying for a week or two. And that is really enabled the agencies that we work with to really expedite the velocity of application development. And of course, that enhances the customers and the citizens' interactions with government.
Well, Zach, you've worked with many federal customers, and governance is nothing new. But what is it, in your estimation, that's getting in the way of adapting governance for the cloud, and gets in the way of actually improving governance itself?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing that's in the way is that change is difficult. We all know that enterprise change, organizational change is very difficult. And AWS tends to think about this in three ways. You can bring in a new technology, that's a change, and that'll improve a little bit. You can bring in a new technology and train your people. That's a further change, and that'll make a further improvement. But to really transform and get the benefit, you bring in the new technology, you train your people, and you change mindsets. So this organizational change from, face it, we've been in the industry for a long time now. We're in the data center industry, in the business of doing things on premise for a long time. We're very expert. We know how to do it. Cloud is still relatively new as a paradigm and how we think about how to use cloud very effectively. And so I think that change from this is what I've always known to this is what is now possible is difficult. And part of the reason it's difficult is because it can imply risk. So there can be the thinking that if I don't do it the way I've always done it, that can introduce risk. For example, in the change control example, sometimes customers might think if they hear an example like that, oh, you just want to skip steps. Absolutely not. We don't want to skip steps. We want to automate. We want to make things more efficient. In fact, that can make things even more secure than some of the traditional approaches. So I think having an excitement, an eagerness, and an open-mindedness to what new technology can actually do for the federal government and for citizens receiving the services, I think that's really important. I think a willingness to get in there and learn and be adaptable is really important, but always with a risk-based mindset that no, we're not going to do those things inappropriately or introduce risk. I think another piece that can be in the way is federal procurement is to some degree lagging behind what cloud can offer. And we often see that there are procurements that are structured around data center paradigms. They have traditional things like quantities of servers and data center management concepts and, LCATs for siloed skill sets like database engineers and server engineers and that sort of thing. And that makes it very difficult sometimes for cloud to fit into those procurements. Now, many federal agencies are looking at that and making changes. We're really excited about it. So I think there's a lot of growth there, but I would definitely encourage federal agencies to think about how they're crafting their procurements so they can take the best advantage of cloud. And that really gets to the governance piece as well, because when you start with how am I going to operate and manage and control this technology appropriately, then you can issue procurements that are cloud friendly. Then you can begin to adapt your thinking and bring in new processes.
Some great points there. This next question that I'd like to ask both of you, Amazon partners with hundreds of federal system integrators and suppliers. So how do those partnerships and how does it's AWS's work with Ventech in particular help government innovate faster? Zach, maybe you can start off on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing around partnerships is that AWS is in the business of building really the world's leading cloud services that are available to any federal and commercial customers. And we rely on our partners to take these services and interpret them for our customers. Ventech, for example, really specializes deeply in several cloud areas, but two of which that I know well are migration competencies, really helping federal customers migrate, and healthcare, really helping health sciences customers get the most out of cloud. And so one of the benefits to our customers, our end customers, federal agencies, is that partners specialize in functions, in services to take advantage of AWS cloud and give those services to the agencies. This gives a second advantage, which is really, really important, which is if a federal agency is either putting out a competitive procurement or maybe has a vendor that's been with them for some time and it's working very well for them, AWS can make sure that that contractor partner is empowered and has the most possible skills to do the best for the customer using AWS technologies. So partners are very, very important to help federal customers get the most from cloud and help federal customers have the best choice of partners.
So, Steve, how do you see things from your side of the desk and from your perspective?
Yeah, so similarly, the inverse is absolutely true as well, right? Bringing all of the AWS expertise to bear in partnership with our clients is exquisitely important. Everything from validating infrastructure designs, cloud designs, security architectures, network, that is absolutely critical to really dispel a lot of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right, that swirls around, especially for folks that are primarily on-prem still. They don't have a very high comfort level yet. So to have that, to have AWS be able to come to the table along with us and say, no, we've examined this. This is an excellent design. We validated it to move forward. That really does streamline the process and really allows the momentum to build very, very quickly within an agency. And also, of course, IT moves very fast. The cloud is moving tremendous speeds with new developments. AWS, is certainly foremost among those, bringing out new capabilities in the healthcare and also in other aspects. So being able to bring in experts from those areas within AWS to sit down with the executives and thought leaders within agencies to present those new possibilities, those new proven technologies, that has really greatly expedited the uptake of those within agencies that we've seen.
And can either of you share some examples of how your partnership has, manifested itself in helping government agencies modernize faster or improve services to the public? Zach, can you offer a couple of examples?
Absolutely. One of the examples that I'm excited about is, of course, I mentioned Ventech in the healthcare space and the health sciences space. One of the things that Ventech has done is use AWS machine learning technology, one of our services called SageMaker. And Ventech has worked deeply with AWS to really understand how to get the most out of SageMaker machine learning technologies, how to build the best algorithms that solve real health sciences problems. And Ventech can offer that to their customers, to our mutual customers. One of the things that's important about our partnership is because Ventech is an advanced tier partner with us, for example, if there's an issue with SageMaker, if there's something complex or a new feature, Steve, for example, can reach out to us, can reach out to the SageMaker service team that actually builds SageMaker in AWS and get direct support for our end customers. So that's a direct benefit of how closely we work together.
And Steve, again, as you work with AWS, can you point to an example where that partnership has really paid off for a federal agency?
Sure. Well, AI/ML is very, very close to my heart. I actually, have patents in that realm. From having been a federal CIO myself, the practical implementations of replacing a lot of the original network design and third-party vendors with AWS native services, really working with us and with the agency to move that through has really helped capture a great cost savings for one of the primary centers at CMS that we work with. So that is a very practical, right? It's one of those things that even though we have exquisitely high-end network architects and engineers, right? If it's a new technology, how many times have they done it? So really having that reach back into AWS expertise and that they have done it many, many times, and this is how the transition could go off seamlessly. That was extremely valuable and enabled us to capture those savings much more quickly than would have been possible otherwise.
And last question for both of you. What do you see as the art of the possible for government agencies over the coming year or two because of the cloud that agencies might not have been able to accomplish maybe as recently as a year or two ago? Steve, your first thoughts on that?
My first thoughts are actually going to be around hyperautomation. really, sort of bringing the conversation that we've had to date really full circle, right? By establishing the right governance structure, the right architectures, the right tools, really does enable the application development organizations that build the services and systems that we as citizens and anybody who needs to interact with federal government, to enable them to really expedite the development cycle. And really squeeze out all of the meetings and touch points that drain a lot of labor hours, so that the developers can actually focus on what they love to do, which is development. Nobody likes to attend meetings. So really getting to the hyper automation realm, that will, I truly believe, and I've seen this on the ground as well, it will help crush costs. Because all of that labor overhead is squeezed out of the system. And then the security officers can focus on higher order activities of actually securing rather than basic compliance. Code quality can be, the developers can actually focus on code quality rather than rectifying minor issues or having to go back with the infrastructure team to determine what's not working. Hyperautomation eliminates a lot of those flaws and drags on the velocity. So.
That's a great example. And Zach, what else do you see as the art of the possible for federal agencies?
Wyatt, it's a hard question because there's so much and it's very exciting. But I can tell you there's one theme I'm increasingly hearing that is a bit new, and I'm really excited about it. I'm increasingly hearing from our federal agency customers that they need a better way of managing all their data. They don't want to have to move data into expensive, complex data warehouses, and they don't want to have to maintain enormous ETL jobs. But at the same time, they want to make that data accessible to authorized users in a publish subscribe type model, or they want to be able to aggregate that data in new ways. So I'm hearing this quite a lot. And it turns out that there's a newish concept called data mesh that's come out since about 2019. And this concept answers exactly those needs and questions. This concept allows federal agencies to federate and democratize their data out to authorized users. It allows authorized users to discover data across the whole enterprise, aggregate it, build analytics jobs against it, report it, visualize it, all of these things. And the interesting thing is, long before the first paper was written on data mesh, AWS was already built this way. We can implement advanced data mesh. We can overlay it on existing customers' infrastructures right now today. And we're talking with a few customers about it, large federal agencies right now, who are going to move out on some of this. And it's very, very exciting how we can give greater access to users who need it of important federal data.
That sounds very powerful and very promising as well. Well, Zach Kelly at AWS and Steve Veneruso at Ventech Solutions, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing some of your insights on ways that your partnership can continue to help federal agency advance their use of the cloud. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Wyatt.